welcome everyone to today's Synergist product demo webinar, Innovations in Portable Calibration, Data Collection, and Enhanced Reporting. I'm Kay Bechtold, Managing Editor of the Synergist, the magazine of AIHA. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today, and especially Sensodyne for sponsoring this webinar. Today's product demo is scheduled for 30 minutes, so I'm going to dive right in and quickly introduce today's speaker, Aaron Apostolico. Aaron is responsible for Sensodyne's corporate IH program, manages the product applications across the business, and provides technical support for the product lines to the global marketplace. He currently holds professional designations as a CIH, CFP, and Certified Indoor Environmental Consultant. And now I'll turn the presentation over to Aaron.
Thank you and welcome everyone for joining us today. I'm really excited to be here and talk about two new products we have at Sensodyne, our Gillian GoCal Pro and our Gillian Connect Pro supporting software. Our presentation today is going to be on digital traceability. It's really an innovation within the industrial hygiene market. Real quick agenda, I have an overview of the presentation. We're going to talk about the instruments themselves and the supporting software, some instrument operational features, the importance of supporting documentation, what it is and how it relates to our industrial hygiene air sampling, and then digital traceability. It ties our software back to our instrumentation. So this presentation will really demonstrate the new functions and features offered with our new GoCal Pro calibrator, really how today's professionals can use it in support of digital traceability. Attendees will be able to view how the calibration records can be linked to their air sampling information and really how this sample integrity can be downloaded and then processed with our new Gillian Connect Pro software. So let's start with our GoCal Pro instruments. Some key facts and features related to the calibrator include 1% accuracy across the complete flow range. It's a very portable handheld instrument. It's about the width of your palm. It's easy to read. It's got a color, really bright touchscreen that can be viewed both inside and outside. It creates traceable calibration records, which is really a new innovation. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Monitors the health of the pumps. One of the key indicators of a pump stability has to do with the pulsation. And the pulsation will be monitored and provided in a percent deviation value within the instrument's averaging feature. It's really easy to use to set up. And the instrument comes in 3 models, as you see in this picture, with flow ranges that cover 5 cc's per minute to 600 cc's per minute for the low flow. Our standard flow is going to be from 600 cc's per minute all the way up to 5 liters per minute. And then our high flow unit will go from 4 liters per minute all the way up to 30 liters per minute. I'm also going to talk about our Gillian Connect Pro 2.0 software. This software creates digital traceability, which ties the sampling chain together. It empowers the end users to manage their air sampling operations with ease and control. Advanced configuration and programming tools save time and resources. And lastly, enhanced reporting capabilities with improved data visualization will allow users to gain deeper insights into their air sampling events in order to make those key informed decisions. So this is really a screenshot of the new GoCal Pro calibrator, and I'm going to call attention to a few features. So it does have directional flow. You can see the 2 arrows at the bottom of the molding pointing to the direction of flow towards the pump. In this circled feature, you see the live flow reading. This is really helpful in making quick adjustments to your air sampling pump. So you're not waiting for a cycle or a bubble or a dry cell puck to move up and down. You get an instantaneous reading. So the other thing that you can do is you hit this play button and it'll actually sample for a set determined sampling time. And then you get an average flow for that sample period. You'll also get that percent deviation that I just spoke about. Once you have that, you have the option to now save your calibration event. And then of course you can view the calibration event in your reports tab within the instrument itself. Some other key operational features of the calibrator is the ability to select sample periods. So as I mentioned before, you have a sample duration. Now we have some pre-programmed sample times, 5, 10, 15, or 30 seconds, but you can sample for hours if you choose to. Now, the longer the sample duration, the more you can actually detect the pulsation within the air sampling event. But if you want a relatively quick calibration, you might want to choose 5 or 10 seconds as your sample period. Users have the flexibility to also set things like engineering units, the date and time, the temperature, and choose from over 9 languages within the device's library. Internal sensors within the unit can also standardize the flow rates using reference temperatures and reference pressures. Now, the STP corrected flow rates facilitate data comparisons across different environmental conditions. I'll give you a quick example. Let's just say you were calibrating your sample pumps in the field and the temperatures in the morning are 62 degrees outside. And then you sample all day, and at the end of the work shift, you do a post calibration outside in the same location, but now let's just say it's 88 degrees outside. So if you wanted to really look at the corrected flow rate based on the changes in environmental conditions, you can do that using the STP feature and really show that my starting and ending flow rates were within the approved, typically 5% of the set flow. So additionally, we have onboard computing. This can data log the calibration events and perform some statistical analysis on the deviation between the readings. So let's just say that you have a 30-second sample. So if you can imagine, you have an average, but during that 30 seconds, you have slight deviations, which is pulsation of most pneumatic pumps. You want this value to be as small as possible, especially if you're doing calibration of a size selective sampler like a cyclone or an impactor that has a very specific flow rate. Users can define the statistical parameters for the percent deviation. So if you want this to be, relatively small, you might want to set your threshold at 1%. If that value goes above 1%, it would change from green to red, letting you know that, hey, this is a higher pulsation pump, and it may not be suitable for your sampling needs. Some additional features we built into the calibrator include a full touchscreen with a user interface to actually enter in key support data, which really helps maintain that sample integrity. Those data fields include things like your pump model number, your pump serial number, the user name, and the sample identifier that you would use for your sample media and on the chain of custody. And this really helps tie the entire event together along with the calibration information. Here on the info screen, you also see some key information that is valuable. Here you have things displayed like the serial number of the calibrator, its last calibration date, and then information like how do I get it serviced or how to contact the manufacturer with additional questions. So all of this would be available on the information screen of the instrument. So I talked about all these pieces of information. All of this really culminates into supporting documentation for your air sampling event. Now, documentation and record keeping are really fundamental aspects of all air sampling events. In order to maintain the best integrity of your sampling event, both during and after a sampling event, the operators or users of the equipment must record the relevant data that corresponds with that event. So why is this record keeping so important? Well, as I mentioned before, sample integrity. It also helps with report preparation. And then most notably, it also helps with legal deposition. If you ever have to defend your sampling event because there was an overexposure that resulted in a worker injury, having this information and making your air sampling event as defensible as possible is a key benefit of utilizing our GoCal Pro and our Gillian Connect Pro software. So what exactly is supporting documentation? Well, for legal cases, things that are typically included would be your chain of custody, any field notes that you take, the pump model, the pump ID, the sample ID, any information about the worker or the area ID, the start and stop times, of course, your flow rate, which could include your flow average, the total volume collected, the relevant activities that took place, and then, of course, your calibration log. Now, these are all key documents that should be maintained as part of every sampling event. So again, these include that calibration log, those field notes, and your chain of custody. Now, these three documents are really interrelated and have overlapping information that should be consistent across all three documents. So the calibration log, let's specifically focus in on this. The details should be captured really include the calibration information, the date and time of calibration, the pump model, the serial number, the username, the sample ID, the calibrator ID, the date of the last calibration, any environmental conditions like the ambient temperature and pressure, the flow average, the number of samples or the time averaged in a sample set, any standard deviation or percent deviation, as well as the flow rate readings. Now, calibration documentation varies from one service provider or manufacturer to another. Maintaining a copy of the calibration certificate is usually an essential part of that for identifying measurement uncertainty, guard-banded acceptance limits, accreditation bodies, and other provider-specific details. Field notes should also be captured. These would include precise details about the sampling event. These details should align with those in the calibration log and incorporate those activities specific to the pump and media that was used during the calibration. Once the post-calibration process is completed and documented, the information will be transferred to your chain of custody. Now, while many chain of custodies vary in format, there's common details that are required across all chain of custodies. And these really include the customer information, the turnaround time, the sample ID, the date sampled, the collection media, the sample volume units, analysis type, the analysis method, the relinquished and received by names, date, and signatures. So how does this all tie together? All these documents should be kept on file along with the corresponding lab report, as the data may be needed to be reviewed at a later time and analyzed for consistency or used for comparing historic data sets. In some instances, the data may be challenged in legal action where the supporting documentation must be defensible. Be very mindful of transcribing notes. Often pump identification, calibration data information, the sample name can all get mixed up, especially when you're collecting multiple samples simultaneously. Timestamp digital documentation is the most reliable thing that you can have, along with written field notes, from 5 years ago. It can be very hard to discern what is what when trying to look back. When applicable, downloaded data, transcribed, handwritten field notes, and electronic files are all kept together in one place, it makes it a lot easier to make those key informed decisions as well as provide that defensible action. This leads me to our newest product, which is the Gillian Connect Pro software. This brings all the supporting documentation together in one place for complete digital traceability. It integrates and links information from the Gillier Plus air sampling pumps, as well as the Gillian GoCal Pro airflow calibrators for complete air sampling continuity. You can download and organize data. You can filter that data and review historic events where exposure limits have been exceeded. You can do batch reporting efficiently query and analyze sampling event data with options to organize sample reports into dedicated batch folders. Such as if you want to look at, how many times did we sample for methyl ethyl ketone over the last 5 years? You can enter that query information into the software. It'll provide all of the instances, and now you can look at all of the reports with all of the supporting documentation tied to that query. Additionally, with the new software, you have the ability to add custom devices that are not downloadable, and their associated event details or calibration information. So regardless of whether you're using our latest, newest technologies, you can still take advantage of the new Gillian Connect Pro software. Let's just say if you have an older style pump but want to use the new Gillian GoCal Pro calibrator. It allows you to enter in your pump information manually, but still take advantage of the digitally downloaded GoCal Pro calibrator information and tie them together. Pumps can be downloaded to the PC software, and event information and field information can be entered into the details for that sampling event. So this slide really shows where you can put in that key event information, as well as additional notes, photos, and other supporting documentation, which can be uploaded and linked to that specific sampling event. And one of the newer features is the airflow calibrator data that can be downloaded and added to your database. The calibrators, again, the GoCal Pro calibrators can actually be downloaded directly to this PC software and generate printable calibration reports that include the sample information, the saved instrument settings, and sample flow rate information. So this can create its own report just for the calibration information, or you can tie the calibration information with the air sampling information together and create one complete report with your laboratory results included. In this, excuse me, in this window, you can see you can connect your downloaded pre and post calibration information. What it does is it'll actually bring it in from the database, tie it to your air sampling event information, and it'll even give you the flow deviation from your starting and ending calibration information, so you can see if that deviation was greater than that 5%. Professional calibration with digital traceability. This is really the focus of both our new Gillian GoCal Pro calibrator as well as this Gillian Connect Pro software. It provides an accurate and reliable calibrator, which is really a critical part of every air sampling event. Information from the calibrator, along with the pre and post flow verification information, is important to support your air sampling event results. And then, of course, digital traceability provides the best sample integrity by putting all the information in one place for your sampling event, your calibration, and lab analysis. So be confident in your air sampling with our new Gillian GoCal Pro calibrator and our Gillian Connect Pro software. That concludes my slides, and at this point I can open it up for some questions and be happy to answer any of that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Aaron. It looks like we have about 10 minutes left for questions. Just a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, please type it into the chat window on the right side of your screen and send it to everyone. Got a couple of questions to get us started, Aaron. The first one I have is, what value should we set the percent deviation threshold?
So that's a good question. Typically, I would set it at 2.5%. Reason I choose 2.5% is you want your starting and ending values to be within 5%. So if you have pulsation that's less than 2.5, assuming you were at the extreme on one or the other, you'd be within that 5%. However, if you are doing something like sampling for respirable dust or respirable silica, I might reduce that to, let's say, 1% to make sure that there's as little pulsation as possible that could affect the capture velocity of those particulates.
Okay, thanks. The next question I have is, how frequently is the airflow sampled?
So that's a good question. It's actually being sampled in the kilohertz range, which means thousands of samples per second. However, in your report, it actually breaks down the sample period with a live reading divided by 16. So if you chose, let's just say 10 seconds, you'd have a reading roughly every, what is that, like 0.8 seconds, 0.7 seconds. Um, but of course, it will just take that value of, if you had 30-second interval, it's roughly every 2 seconds.
Okay, great, thanks. The next question I have is, does the software reside at the client?
It does. So Sensodyne doesn't have any access to that software. So you actually have to download it to your specific PC, and then all of the data from the database is saved to your PC. Now you could back up that data to another database location, but it's really lives on your hard drive.
Okay, thanks. The next question I have is, does the software come with the purchase of the GoCal Pro?
It does. So I forgot to mention that within the presentation. Thank you. That's a great question. It is actually a free software. The software is available with the purchase of our Gillian Gillier Plus pumps, as well as the Gillian GoCal Pro calibrators. So it is a free software. And really, the software can be used just like a IH database. You can actually put in all the key information about your similar exposure groups. You could put in your worker locations, your departments, all that can be built in to the information, which can be downloaded from your Gillier Plus pumps. And you can create really an IH database using this software.
Okay, great. Thank you. The next question I have, this person says, I may have missed this, but is it a rechargeable battery? How long does a charge last? And what is the charger cord configuration? For example, USB-C.
So it does have a rechargeable lithium-ion battery. That charge on it basically gets over 24 hours. But remember, this is a calibrator, so it's not generally being run, consistently. You use it for, maybe an hour at the beginning of your work shift, an hour at the end, so maybe 2 hours in a work shift. So, assuming that, you were sampling 5 work shifts in a week, you could probably get over 2 weeks worth of battery use on a full charge. So usually that's not an issue. It is a USB-C. I charge mine with my USB-C that I use for my phone in my car. So, it's really easy that you can recharge it with a USB-C plug.
Okay, great. Thanks. The next question I have is about the standard deviation. If you were looking at 5% standard deviation for the calibration, where did you come up with the 2.5%?
Sure. So the percent deviation of 5%, this is where, again, it could be a plus or minus value, right? So if you have, let's just say, a plus 2.5% at the beginning of your sampling event, because it was maybe, leaning towards one end at the start of the event, and you had a 2.5 deviation at the end, and for whatever reason it was completely the other side, then this total of the two could be 5%. So that's why I set it at 2.5 to make sure it's within that 2.5% deviation during my little sample set. That way I know if it was, higher on one side and lower on the other, the summation of those two would still be less than 5%.
Okay, great, thanks. Let's see. The next question I have, someone asks, what is the difference between flow verification and calibration?
Sure. So calibration is when you're actually making adjustments of the pump to the standard. All right. But when you've completed the calibration, all right, you want to record it. So now you're done making the adjustments. That's when you would hit the play button on the calibrator. It gives you that average and you save that. So now that's your flow verification. And that's really where you get your sample integrity to say that, yes, my flow rate was recorded at this value. That's what I'm verifying my flow rate at. So you have a starting flow rate and then an ending flow rate.
Gotcha. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to interrupt you there. The next question we have is, can Gillian Connect Pro work with my older equipment?
Yes, but you would have to manually enter it. So depending on what older equipment you're talking about, let's just say that you have a Gillian Plus pump, but let's just say you have an older calibrator, or maybe even, dare I say, a competitor calibrator. You can still manually enter that information into the Connect Pro system to tie all the information together and create reports that you can use and query and have in your database. So yes, you can use the older Gillian equipment or even some competitor equipment. It's just that you have to manually enter that information in each time. Whereas if you have a Gillian Plus pump and or a GoCal Pro calibrator, you can actually just connect it to your PC directly through the software, download that information, and now most of the fields are pre-populated.
Okay, thanks. I think we have time for one more question. To have somebody who's asking about, I guess, what is the frequency of factory recalibration?
So this is pretty standard across the industry. It's 1 year. This is what OSHA utilizes and also recommends. Different manufacturers may state differently. I know different companies, some of them have more frequent requirements, but from a factory standpoint, we recommend sending it in annually. And it's not just for calibration, it's for preventative maintenance too. So we check all the sensors, we check and verify that it's calibrated against our primary NIST traceable calibrators in our 17025 laboratory. So getting a OEM manufacturer calibration and factory service is really key to maintaining your equipment in the best order.
Okay, great. Thanks, Aaron. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. We'll be sharing all questions from today's event with Sensodyne, so if we didn't get to your question, please know that we will pass it along. My thanks to Aaron Apostolico for his presentation, to Sensodyne for sponsoring today's product demo webinar, and to all of our participants. Please consider joining us tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern for our next Synergist webinar, which will focus on data in digital SDS management systems. You can register at aiha.webvent.tv. Thanks to everyone again, and have a great day.
Thank you, Kay, and thanks to the AIHA. I really appreciate the invite.